If there's one thing Craig Conroy is going to do, it is run and address any trade rumors involving his coveted veterans that remain with the team.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Today, we are going to be addressing and unpacking these trade rumors that Craig Conroy squashed when it comes to Rasmus Andersson, as well as what the future might hold for Rasmus Andersson. And of course, we cannot have today's show without discussing Rory Kerins' hot start, my goodness, and what lies ahead on the radar, including some potential trade targets for the Calgary Flames. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And let's dive right into these rumors that have been floating around for really for the better half of a year now. But they have heated up over the last week to 10 days because the trade deadline is approaching and those trade bait lists have come out. And Rasmus Andersson finds himself atop of those lists, and makes sense. He has a year left on his contract after this one. He's a solid first pairing defenseman, plays great on the power play, and he does have an offensive edge to him that we just have not seen much of lately. But Craig Conroy came out earlier this week and was very clear that he doesn't understand why teams are calling for Rasmus Andersson, because he has never made it known that he wants to trade Rasmus Andersson, that is part of his plan. But at the same time, I feel like the other general managers would not be doing their job if they did not call Craig Conroy, because what if they offer him something that is a really sweet deal that, is enough to get him thinking about it and plants the seed, even if he's not necessarily thinking of following through with it at that moment. I think that other general managers are doing their due diligence, and I get why Conroy threw it out there, but for a guy that played all of his cards on the table last trade deadline, first year as a general manager, maybe he has some regrets with that and is holding the cards a little bit closer to his chest now. Obviously, Rasmus Andersson has been a crucial part of the Flames' success in the past, as well as this current rebuild, and integrating new defensemen, including Miramonov and Kevin Ball. But does it make sense for the Flames to sign him, the 28-year-old, to a long-term extension next year? Or I guess this coming July. It would not be effective until the end of next season. So, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about another like Noah Hannafin situation where it's 7 years, $7.5 million or whatever it was? That is a lot. And I don't necessarily think that that's something the Flames need to be getting themselves into. The Flames already have a lot of older players signed to long-term contracts, which is something that is discussed ad nauseum, right? We talk about it all the time. And right now, I think Mackenzie Weegar is, I don't think he is going anywhere over his remaining time on his contract. I feel like he will be the next captain of the Calgary Flames, in fact. I don't like a long-term extension for a 28, 29-year-old player. It's just it just sets you up for a very disappointing, I guess, potentially disappointing end to their career, and you're looking to move a 33-year-old defenseman. It's not Chris Tanev, who people are biting and fighting over, but I think a 4-year deal would be great, 4 or 5, sure. I feel like the Flames have had consistent logjam in their defensive prospects, but I don't necessarily think any of them are really top pairing defensemen. So I fully wholeheartedly believe that trading Rasmus Andersson would be a detriment to the defensive group and as well as the room with morale and things like that. But you have to weigh out the pros and cons. And I think at the end of the day, the Flames are not looking to pull a Vegas and just trade away whoever, regardless of if they're a fan favorite or not. And pulling punches like that is it's a double-edged sword. No pun intended there with Marc-Andre Fleury's sword picture. But I just, I think Rasmus Andersson is a fantastic human being from the stories I've heard, from what he does within the community. But for the sake of a team that is looking to get younger, is this necessarily the move they want to make? I don't know. And like that NHL exec said in that interview with James Johnson from the Win column, I'm very glad I'm not in Craig Conroy's shoes, and I feel like that's something we can all agree to, because this is not an easy position to be in. I think Zane Perrick is obviously like your next guy, potentially with Hunter Brustowicz. But again, those are all prospects that can't necessarily be brought up at the moment. Could you transition them to NHL players over the next 3-4 years if you do extend Andersson? That is an avenue to go down, to explore and think about. But I think anything more than 3 or 4 years is absolutely bananas for an extension. And we we see why. We see a lot of these older, I hate saying older because he's 28 years old, but the players in their late 20s, early 30s, that is when they hit their peak before. And once you hit your peak, there's kind of only one way to go. So I guess for me, you have to see how the rest of this season goes, evaluate how he feels, what does he want. How many times have we heard players say, "Oh, I want to sign long-term here. I would love to stay long-term here. This city means so much to me. I love the fans." Noah Hanifin, Matthew Tkachuk immediately come to mind. And then there's other players too, like I don't think Chris Tanev really said anything like that last year, but it's been discussed many a times in the Calgary Flames locker room. So I wouldn't be surprised if you do see him get traded at the deadline next year. And that's just something we're going to have to keep an eye out on as we continue through the trenches of this Flame season. But coming up next, we are going to talk about Rory Kerins' hot start in his first NHL game, as well as what's cooking with these younger kids and why you should be optimistic, even though there are some things lingering in the Flames locker room. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy shows, anything. One of my favorite memories is attending the Flames home opener this season, and just the energy and level of excitement were unforgettable and unmatched. Now Game Time has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I used Game Time to go to the Flames Oilers game back in October, as well as the Flames when they came to Montreal. And I love Game Time picks because it made searching for tickets super easy. And you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. And my, oh my, what a debut it was for Rory Kerins against the Chicago Blackhawks. I cannot believe that. I mean, yes, I can, but Jakob Pelletier was on hat trick watch 20 minutes into this game. Like that's crazy. That's not something I thought I would see this season. And it came 100 days after being placed on waivers by the Flames. And I don't know, I feel like it's just a testament to see like where how fast things can change. And all you needed was 100 days and you're already just it's a very feel-good story for a player that is very clearly the brightest spot in a room. Like the epitome of he lights up every room he walks into. But Rory Kerins had 2 assists on both goals, which is fantastic. I think that we see a young guy like Pelt score and it's super exciting, but when you see the assist coming from the guy making his debut, it's kind of like, this is overall fantastic. It's fun, it's exciting, and it gives you something to root for. And I felt like watching him on Tuesday, I lied, Monday, he was all over the ice. He fits right in. He knew where he needed to be. And to me, that's the most important thing. Because, I mean, obviously within your first your little transition period to the NHL, you might look a little out of sorts and like a lost puppy out on the ice. But that was not the case at all. He looked like he fit right in. He knew where he needed to be or where he needed to be next. He had some great scoring chances, which, I mean, what more could you want, right? This kid has been an AHL just superstar this year. And for him to come right in and kind of prove what we had all suspected and expected of him is great. I think it's super neat, and I really like that they did take the bet on him. They took a chance, and he was the right player to call up. Kerins has made his NHL debut and has been with this organization for a while. And they were talking about it on the broadcast as well. Like, he didn't see any games during the preseason. He didn't really see the ice during the preseason. And it was very clear that he was part of that group C, I don't want to say the odd man out, because that sounds really negative, but the group that was going to be sent back to the AHL or their respective juniors teams, things like that. And for him to come in this season and just go on an offensive tear, 21 goals in 31 games is just bananas. And it's so great to see, obviously, a Flames prospect tearing it up like that, but especially a center You know what the Flames have desperately needed? Not just this year, but in years prior? Center depth. Could Rory Kerins be part of this solution? I sure hope so. He will be a UFA at the end of this season as well. So the Flames have a decision to make. I just really, I know it's a small sample size, and I know you can't put all your eggs in one basket, but I liked what we saw, and I look forward to the next game. Obviously, back to back playing back-to-back road games to start your NHL career is a lot. It is a very different workload management, and that's something else that we saw players like Matt Coronado have to get used to last year and this year. So it's okay to lean into his presence on the Flames roster. I do want, speaking of Matt Coronado, he scored as well against the Blackhawks. I really don't want to spend too much time talking about the St. Louis game because that was just good for Kevin Ball. It was, a solid effort from the team, but like 2-1 loss. What are you going to do there? But Matt Coronado scored against Chicago, and my thing with him is the consistency. And, he's not that game breaker. He's not necessarily going to break the game wide open, but he is someone that puts so much effort and energy into every shift and makes sure to capitalize or come as close to capitalizing off of every chance that he possibly can. And to me, that's important. To me, that says a lot about his character, his work ethic, and what I like to see. Dustin Wolf, once again, I can't say enough good things about him. I get why Dan Vladar started the game against St. Louis. It felt very Markstrom-esque in terms of him letting up the first goal on the first shot very early on. And this team just stinks on the road. So, I can't sit here and nitpick everything, but I do shout out to Kevin Ball, and shout out to him because I did not have him scoring the Flames' only goal last night. But coming up next, we're going to talk about what's on the radar, and could Taylor Hall possibly be on the move to Calgary? Let's talk about all these crazy trade rumors coming up next here on Locked On Flames. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find an amazing candidate fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored job posts put your post at the top of the page to help you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in a spot where, management needs to add a player to the team, and thank goodness for Indeed, because they do come in clutch when the pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback, and that's exactly when Indeed's sponsored job posts come in handy. They make sure your posts are seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Are you hiring? Indeed is all you need. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. You can follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Jess Belmosto. I love this time of year because you get players or general managers coming out of the woodwork, giving their assessment of where things are at. We're not looking to retool, or I see myself leaving at the trade deadline. I would love to stay, but it might be more beneficial for the team to trade me. And that's where Taylor Hall finds himself once again. So Taylor Hall was obviously traded to Chicago in the last summer for a cap dump. So Hall and Nick Foligno were sent to Chicago to go kind of be veteran support for Connor Bedard. And basically he's lost his edge there for whatever reason, whether it be because he's only playing with super young kids or, he's had a lot of injuries over the last few years. So maybe something's coming up with that and it's just kind of all catching up to him. But is Taylor Hall a player you could see the Flames trading for? I certainly don't see why you wouldn't at least call. Not because you think you're going to make the playoffs and you need offensive edge or anything like that. I think that, number one, he is a first overall pick. The trade is 1-for-1, which I still think is nuts. I still can't believe that happened. But anyways, he's a player that puts something into your lineup. Again, a solid veteran forward that, realistically, I'm thinking you potentially trade Kuzmenko, right? I don't necessarily think Andrei Kuzmenko is going to get you a whole lot in return right now. But if the Blackhawks are looking to move on from Taylor Hall already, maybe you say, hey, this guy also needs a change of scenery. Let's do this. And maybe throw in a guy or a draft pick. So you get a roster player and draft pick. I don't know. The Flames have more than enough cap space to retain salary as well. So I feel like that kind of puts them at an advantage. But you don't necessarily need to be doing all that. Cam Neely of the Boston Bruins spoke to the media today, and personally, I don't think that man should ever be in front of another microphone after him mouthing off about Swayman having $64 million or 64 million reasons to sign an extension right now over the summer. But he said that they're not really sure that they're going to be all in at the deadline. There's one of two directions they could go, and they might they're not interested in retooling. Great. Again, can I interest you in a player like Kuzmenko or Sharon Govich? I understand the Flames just signed him to an extension, but could you use him for something? Give us your draft pick since you can't develop prospects. Something. But at the end of the day, I don't see the Flames really doing anything crazy at the trade deadline. I think, if anything, they will be cap dumps. People have potentially talked about Sean Monahan coming back. I don't think he's leaving the Blue Jackets, especially where they're in a playoff spot. And I don't know if now is the right time for him to be back in Calgary. Quite frankly, I think Sean Monahan is a fantastic human being, but the way the medical stuff went down with him, it would feel incredibly negligent to bring him back for his sake. I feel like people turned a blind eye, and that led to re-injuring himself time and time again and extended injury. But that is a whole nother podcast episode, which I'm sure I've talked about before. But I think the Flames should take calls. I don't necessarily think they need to be making them to acquire players, unless it's like, hey, I got this guy that you might like, and I heard a rumor that you might be trying to get rid of this. So I think Craig Conroy isn't necessarily going to be buying at the trade deadline, but I don't think he's going to be selling at the trade deadline. I think it'll be a quiet year leading up to it, and day of, I don't suspect much movement. And they've made it clear that Kadri isn't going anywhere. Blake Coleman isn't going anywhere. Obviously, Rasmus Andersson, which we talked about at the top of the show. Just take any calls. Make some calls. You're not in a position to make this roster a win now team, which is how you've ended up in this position after 10 years of trying to do that. But we'll have to see as the days approach and the trade deadline gets closer. But again, my prediction is that the Flames will not be buyers or sellers. That is where I'm at. Could they be a third team? I think more than likely they would be a third team in a trade because of the cap space and acquiring some draft picks. But we won't know until the day gets here and it's come and gone, but that will do it for me on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for tuning in and hanging out with me today. I hope you're having a fantastic week. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here free Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. And I will be back tomorrow with some more Flames talk and any news that happens to break between now and then. Bye-bye.